It's the latest in demountable dining, a cafe run by students. Waiting on tables has become part of the course for the half a dozen students from St Peter's at Maitland. The theory of their living skills class put into practice at Cafe Claude.
For them to learn skills in food preparation, hygiene, work attitudes, teamwork, organisation, leadership, all those sorts of things.
With a little help from Michelle Canane, the students have become their own bosses, responsible for everything from baking to balancing the budget.
It's $2.50.
There you go.
How to cook food and prepare the food and I'd be friendly to the customers.
So how does this compare to a normal school?
Quite different because it's very hard.
At this stage, Cafe Claude is only open once a week, with the clientele restricted to teachers and parents. But if customer satisfaction is any guide, these students could easily turn their course into a career. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
And I had a blueberry muffin. Thanks very much.
There are 116,000 hectares of forest in the Morisset area, taking in the Wattagan Range west of Lake Macquarie. In what's being described as an historic agreement between the timber industry and environmentalists, a draft proposal has been put forward nominating just under half the land for conservation.
Yes, it's a very good outcome. The timber industry have the areas they need to log, and the conservation movement can be very satisfied with the areas that we've protected.
Paul Wynne helped negotiate the deal. He says it'll safeguard valuable conservation areas, among them key parts of the South Pakolban State Forest.
It's the last large area of old growth in the whole management area. It has very, very high significance for koala and yellow-belly habitat. In some of those areas there are new species of plants that have yet to be documented. So we're very, very pleased. It's a very rugged and beautiful area.
With 63,000 hectares of forest still available for logging, the agreement suits the timber industry. It's only a draft, though, to be exhibited for public comment later this month. And even if adopted by a state cabinet, it'll just be a short-term measure while a more comprehensive regional forest assessment is carried out. All the same, considering the heat of the logging debate in recent years, the agreement is seen as a breakthrough.
It's very encouraging. I think this is very historic that the timber industry and the conservation movement can actually shake hands and be satisfied with what we've got.
Muir copped plenty of punishment early last night, but came back in the best possible fashion. Combining with Harrigan and Andrew Johns amongst others, Muir evaded his Newcastle teammate Jamie Ainscough to produce the match winner. A reoccurring foot injury will keep him out of tonight's encounter, while Harrigan will be used sparingly. The Johns brothers are expected to start. A full replay of the Souths game tonight from 11:30. In surfing, around 150 hit the water at the Cliff this morning for the opening rounds of the Kuta Egan Surf Classic. All made the most of the 1 to 1.5 metre swell, with the finals to be contested tomorrow afternoon. In cricket, Phil Stambridge has been named Newcastle's Players' Player for season 95-96. The Australian country rep was the association's leading run scorer, while Steve Story was Player of the Year. And in netball, the Newcastle Flyers have maintained their unbeaten record in the inter-district competition. Today they repelled Charlestown, winning the local derby 33-24. Although winning in Wollongong last year, the notorious Snake Pit has proved a stumbling block for the Falcons over the years. Illawarra's victory was built on a solid first half performance, leading by 14 at the break. Imports Marcus Timmins and Andre Lafleur doing the damage inside and out. 15 points from Falcons captain Butch Hayes brought up his 3,000 in the NBL, while David Van Dyke put in another commendable performance with a match-high 30 points. But in the end, it was the Hawks by 9.
This is the face of a modern-day outlaw. A teenager police believe robbed a clothing store at Western last weekend, then made his getaway on a grey horse, chased by locals.
Any sort of armed robbery has got to be a serious matter. Our main concerns are that someone will possibly be hurt if he isn't caught soon.
There have been 10 armed hold-ups involving guns and knives, small shops and takeaways over the last 2 months. Lone female shop assistants have been the targets in many cases.
I can't recall any sort of spate anywhere near this magnitude occurring over such a short space of time.
Extra detectives have been called in to combat the crime wave, with police directing their attention to as many as 3 separate gangs or offenders operating from within the area. With the robberies becoming so brazen, the local business community and police fear it's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt.
Whenever somebody is threatening somebody with some form of weapon and demanding money, there's always the potential for something to go wrong. That has been the case sometimes in the past, and we're certainly wanting to prevent anything like that occurring on this occasion.
Croquet is often associated with medieval days and English greens, with the sport's origins dating back centuries.
It may well have arisen from a joint game along with golf, where in golf they started to hit balls up against trees, and in croquet they started to hit them through hoops.
It also has a keen following in Australia. Enthusiasts are in Newcastle for a state croquet carnival, with the sunny weather much kinder than yesterday's dismal conditions.
Here in Newcastle, it's amazingly popular. We had just one club in Newcastle about 10 years ago, and now we've got about 8 around here.
To the inexperienced eye, croquet looks like a combination of lawn bowls and golf, but the players obviously have a much better understanding of the skill needed to tap the balls through the hoops. The carnival runs until Saturday.
Fog shrouded the valley this morning after almost a week of good rain. Rivers and creeks are running and farmers' spirits are high. Inland falls of up to 70 millimetres have been recorded. In the drought-affected areas like Jerry's Plains, it's hoped there'll be a lot more.
We need a lot more, probably 4 or 5 inches would be handy.
Farmers who have been delaying sowing crops can now get on with the job. They're not out of trouble yet, but there is some optimism. Closer to the coast and rainfall has been near perfect. In some places, double the falls of up the valley.
Oh, it's terrific rain, yeah, it really is. Yeah, we had nice steady rain, so it's all soaked in locally.
Dungog and Gloucester farmers say they are set for a good season ahead. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Schoolwork and classrooms destroyed. The fire at Belmont Public struck at the hearts of students, teachers and the community. Out of the ashes, a charred school bell now swings from a new covered walkway, thrown up around demountable classrooms stacked on bricks. A temporary school taking shape alongside the twisted carcass of the old. Inside, Year 4 students sit down to what's called silent writing, surrounded by the din of building work, artwork depicting the fire and a borrowed fish tank offering some comfort after the loss of their own.
It's been very, very disruptive. There's been so much going on in the school, in the reorganisation of putting buildings together and footpaths, and the children have just been incredibly disrupted and restless. They haven't settled very well at all.
Also sitting down in the only building untouched by the fire, the library, teachers, education officials and P&C members today discussed plans for a new school.
This school will have incorporated into it many features that weren't in the last school. It will have a school hall, it will have an outdoor learning area, and it will also link to the school that was here in the past.
Insurance money and extra government funding of $1.5 million should see a new school built within 2 years.
It's been a very, very difficult experience for the kids and for the teachers, and I think that because it's such a strong community, because there's such strong support from the parents and the teachers, that they've been able to cope with it in a much better fashion than they would have otherwise.
Most people pay little attention to their lawnmowers, usually allowing them to run until they break down.
It's a very small percentage of the population that actually service them on their mowers on a regular basis. Most people just, when they're that fed up with them being hard to start and frustrated, they bring them in there.
According to Newcastle lawnmower mechanic Philip Casserly, some routine maintenance can both save money and help protect the environment. He says harmful greenhouse gas emissions and other ozone-damaging agents can be significantly reduced with some basic engine tuning, such as cleaning the air filter.
I mean, the new mower's got all the tolerances and the rings and the piston and everything are set correctly, and they don't need as much fuel to run. But a worn or badly maintained mower draws in a lot more fuel, uses a lot more oil.
The comments follow the release of new figures from the United States, which show lawnmowers are a significant source of greenhouse gases, some older models shown to cause greater environmental damage than a car. Emma Siossian, NBN News. The focus for this year's Heart Week is on heart attacks, with anyone suffering the symptoms of tightness or pain across the chest encouraged to receive urgent medical treatment.
People should understand what the early symptoms are of heart disease and get to hospital fast. Dial 000 and get there fast because every minute counts.
Hospitals too are being urged to act faster. A new hospital emergency protocol was outlined in Newcastle to representatives from hospital emergency departments and coronary care units. The procedure will encourage hospitals to meet a standard response time for giving clot-dissolving drugs to heart attack patients.
The name of the treatment is thrombolytic therapy, which is added to aspirin to help reduce deaths from heart attack. It's treatment that dissolves clots, and the sooner you get that treatment into the patient and dissolve the clot, the better the patient's chances of surviving and having less damage from their heart attack.
Research shows the death rate is reduced by almost half in heart attack patients who receive the proper treatment within an hour of the start of symptoms. Emma Siossian, NBN News. The student participation courses are available to schools in the Hunter which have qualified for the federal government's Disadvantaged Schools component. The courses began last year and are being run with 65 primary schools and 7 secondary schools, groups of 3 to 4 students from each school taking part. Today, children from the Lake Macquarie area learnt how to plan and implement a new project for their school.
The students then are responsible for costing out that program and how much it will cost them to do that. They have to order all of the resources.
The projects can cost between $500 and $800. One school to already take advantage of the scheme is Blacksmiths Primary, where the students have set up a new science program allowing plenty of hands-on activity.
We had to write a submission what the school needed, but first of all we had to survey the school and ask the children what they thought the school really needed.
We had to get what stuff we needed, and we added up all the money and it came up to $800.
Warriors from a different time, these men, all in their 70s, are in Newcastle for a drink, a chat and to remember their mates. Fighting alongside the Royal Air Force during World War II, the 456 Squadron was set up in 1941, the Aussies taking out 40 enemy aircraft, the squadron famous for its daring night flights.
Well, rumour used to go around rather to protect the radar, the secrecy of our radar and the efficiency of it, that we all ate carrots and we could see in the dark.
The men meet around Australia each year about this time. About 40 survivors are in Newcastle, nearly 300 fought in the war.
Grimy old Newcastle. That's probably the way some Sydney-siders still think of the area. But in fact, Newcastle doesn't even make Australia's top 10 on the pollution scale. Sydney does have a smog problem, much of it the result of choked traffic arteries. So the NRMA came up with the Clean Air 2000 campaign aimed at getting Sydney motorists to clean up their act before governments did so by way of increased charges. When it came to drive a similar campaign in Newcastle, it emerged there's no serious problem. At a Clean Air launch today, business, government and community representatives heard some good news.
In the past few years, Newcastle has become known as a city with an environmental advantage. Indeed, as I flew into Newcastle just late last week in the seaplane, you really do begin to appreciate just what remarkable strides have been made here, and it's very, very noticeable.
Industry still provides Newcastle with some pollution problems, but to maintain air quality, the NRMA sees it as important that vehicle pollution is not allowed to grow from its present low level. A local committee will now look at reducing unnecessary car usage, cycleways, carpooling, park and ride schemes, improve public transport.
Now I'd like to make it clear that Clean Air 2000 and Newcastle Clean Air 2000 are not anti-car. I mean, that's just ridiculous. We all need cars to get around all the things that we want to do ourselves.
Mr McGeoch says the campaign is all about striking a balance. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
This used to be a sleepy main street that no longer attracted the tourists the town depended on for survival. Once a premier tourist destination, the entrance has been abandoned in favour of more upmarket areas such as Terrigal. But this is all changing, with the business community joining forces with council to launch a bold rebirth.
It's essential that it be upgraded. It's some 17 years old, this place. As you know, the entrance itself is a place where people came for holidays. Some 10, 20 years ago, it was swelling to 50 or 60,000 people in holiday time. We're looking to get the tourist dollar back here. We're looking to keep the retail dollar here.
The Lakeside Shopping Centre has revamped a number of shops with a similar aquatic theme to be adopted throughout the entire town upgrade. While some business operators are annoyed at the Main Street disruption, Mayor Tony Sheridan says it's set to benefit them in the long term.
The shopkeepers are now seeing the potential benefit of the area, and it'll be upmarket, it'll be upgraded coincidentally with this, and there'll be a colour theme go right through the place. It'll be something really exciting.
This is the generation that would be most affected by any proposed changes to gun laws, and they've made their opinions well known to local member Bob Baldwin.
Well, we told him that we wanted a complete ban on semi-automatic and automatic military-style weapons.
Those sentiments were echoed in the letters they sent to Mr Baldwin, demanding a stop to Australia's gun culture. The letters will now be passed on to the Prime Minister before being tabled in federal Parliament. A remarkable result by a group of school children who just couldn't understand why such a tragedy could happen.
Well, it was pretty sad, and a lot of people, like, it wasn't like normal on that day.
Mr Baldwin says it's a shared sense of sorrow, and he'll support the new legislation regardless of what effect it'll have on his re-election chances.
But if the gun lobby decide that they need to muster the forces to oust me, then I will gladly wear that ousting, because it is something that I am personally saddened by.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Get down.
It's almost become part of the daily routine at the Tomago sandbeds. Workmen in bulldozers moving soil around trees adorned with protesters. There's been an uneasy tension between the two groups that boiled over today with a potentially dangerous protest at the mine. A young man jumped into the dredge water and for 2 hours refused to come out.
When we eventually convinced Jeff to get out of the water, he was hypothermic and in possible shock. So we had an ambulance come and he's been taken to hospital.
The Tomago Sandbed Action Alliance moved in after their court action to stop the clearing was adjourned. The Alliance will know by tomorrow if it can lodge an injunction to stop the work. If that fails, it will have to wait until the resumption of the court case on July 22. The Alliance claims the extraction of zircon and rutile from the sandbeds pollutes the aquifer and drives out animals, in particular koalas. NBN contacted RZM today, but the media spokesperson failed to return our call. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
They're both a safety hazard and an environmental catastrophe. Old ships that just fall apart mid-voyage. And up until recently, they weren't uncommon. But the federal government waged war against the so-called ships of shame, making seaworthiness inspections mandatory. Now research at the University of Newcastle is going one step further, trying to work out how ship owners can forecast when a vessel will become dangerous.
It's very important for them to know how much longer they can keep the ship for at a risk level for the personnel and for their cargoes and for their investment that's sufficiently low.
For Australian companies, the information would be an economic boon rather than a safety issue. Most sell their vessels long before they become unsafe. Accurate forecasting would tell them how much longer they can hang on to their ships, possibly saving them many millions of dollars. The researchers have already decked one ship out with high-tech measuring equipment to determine corrosion rates and fatigue levels.
Ultimately, we'll be able to use the information we get from those gauges, put that into a big computer program, and I mean a really big computer program, and on the basis of that work out at one particular spot in the ship what the metal's actually undergoing here.
It's believed the research will also allow shipmasters to plan their voyages better, allowing them to forecast the likely effects of sailing through stormy conditions. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. Dave Roskell has been operating Belmont Cut Price Deli for the past 9 years, but says big shopping centres are forcing him and many other small businesses in the area out of work.
This problem is about the way centre owners are using their financial muscle to crush small shops.
One of the problems for Dave is his rent agreement. He disputes some of the charges, saying major chains pay substantially less.
There is a clause interpretation in our lease which which the owners have, because it was badly worded, the present owners have turned it to their advantage to financially cripple our shop.
Dave says his is not an isolated situation, and today other small shop owners joined him in a noisy protest inside the Belmont Marketplace. They then moved outside and blocked traffic on the Pacific Highway for a short time before deciding to take to their own vehicles. Centre management says today's dispute is purely a personal one between Dave and the centre. It says a Supreme Court ruling states any action it's taken is totally within its rights.
We're a bit disturbed because it really has affected the trading of the centre, and there's a lot of traders in there that they need every dollar they can get, and it has disrupted trading.
The shop owners don't agree. Tomorrow they head to Sydney to seek action from the Minister for Small Business. Simone Thurtell, NBN News.
Graham Hall of Tormina near Coffs Harbour is charged with attempting to murder his estranged wife Jennifer at Dyer's Crossing in August 1994. He is also charged with causing Mrs Hall grievous bodily harm with an intent to murder over a separate incident on April 5th last year. It's alleged that at that time Hall drove a car into the house while his wife was sleeping and then fired a spear gun at her and hit her numerous times with a hammer. Hall has denied all charges. Today in Newcastle Supreme Court, evidence was given by Dr Justin Bowra, who treated Mrs Hall at Manning Base Hospital in April. Dr Bowra told the court that Mrs Hall had suffered potentially life-threatening skull fractures and lacerations and that her injuries were consistent with being struck by a blunt, heavy object. He went on to say that a shallow wound to her neck was consistent with having been hit with the edge of a spear. His evidence was later supported in court by Dr John Christie, the neurosurgeon who treated Mrs Hall at the John Hunter Hospital. The trial continues on Monday. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
The 2-year trial is over and the parking meter is making a hasty return. At a committee meeting next Tuesday, councillors will recommend the old meters be reinstalled. Independent councillor John Tate says there are a number of reasons for wanting them back.
The major problem is that the parking spaces that are not available because of all-day parkers, often employees who work in the CBD shuffle their cars around to fit in with the existing time limits, and it's just reducing the number of spots that are available.
And the income from the parking meters is sorely missed. It's needed to supplement a depleted parking account.
The money raised from the meters will go towards the parking account, which will of course be there to refurbish parking stations and improve the parking amenities generally.
For the past 2 years, Newcastle Council has conducted surveys and asked for feedback from businesses. Now they've decided it's time to act.
Well, I think most of the traders realise that they're missing out on potential customers because all-day parkers are commandeering those spots.
If Council adopts the recommendations, the meters will be introduced in July. And Lord Mayor Councillor Greg Hayes is asking the people of Newcastle to help find solutions for a short-term budget problem. He's inviting the community to attend a workshop at City Hall next week. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.